Hey everybody, still here, Daily Market Pulse, Monday, March 10th, 2014. So we saw markets come off their lows anyway, but they still ended up with small losses, mind you, in lower volume, so not so bad. Again, looks more like profit taking, although it's odd because the NASDAQ has so many distribution days compared to the rest. It's very unusual. Usually it's very much the other way. S&P, Dow Jones, for instance, New York Stock Exchange usually have typically they lead in distribution days, and the Nasdaq typically is the last to come. So it makes you kind of wonder. I think I've said this before, but I've only seen this a few times in so many years, and I wish I could go back and remember what the circumstance was and what happened. But keeping a close eye on it, of course, at all times. So we'll see how it goes. Let's take a look at the charts. So of course the Dow Jones here, you can see it's still at the 1272, just sort of negotiating. Now as of Friday it went through and closed. It did have that little upper shadow into the Bollinger Band, but it did finally get through the 1272. My thought would be that it's testing 1272 as well as the 8 moving average at this point. As you can see that the 20-day moving average is about to cross over, or potentially at least cross over the 50. If that happens, then you'll see the surge, I would think, into the 16,700. Into the 1618, and then we'll have to sort of reassess again what happens when it gets to that point as well. But I would imagine that the strength of this trend can only get stronger if we see a crossover, if it can manage. So we'll see what they do here in the next day or so in terms of negotiating that. So here, very similar, but this, the S&P is at the 1272, did not close through it. Friday they attempted to, it says they did Thursday, but you see they closed right at it. And today, same thing. They just were stuck there. They dropped, but then they reversed. So now it looks bullish, right? It can come back from its lows, reversing. It looks great, but in the same token, you've got essentially a hanging man at a resistance. Usually not a great sign. It's not the most powerful of sell signals, but the simple fact that you're at a resistance area of potential quantity here means we could see trouble. So just keep an eye on it because it is overbought, of course, as well at the same time. So there's the 8 moving average still rising, of course, 20 is still rising. We already did get the cross over the 20 over the 50 on this one, so the strength is there. With room to 1900 on the upside, but of course support directly at the 1860 to 1850 area. Okay, so here the Nasdaq, kind of flat, a little bit on the downside today, but not much. You see it went lower, it came back, finished off the 8 moving average, but it just sort of tested that rising window that occurred last Monday or last Tuesday, pardon me. So it's testing that window for now. It could come all the way into 4270 or 4280 or so. That's what the 20-day moving average will be by tomorrow as well. That's the window itself as well as the 20-day moving average. So we'll take a look to see what happens tomorrow and how they react to those levels, if they even bother to come down there. Otherwise, again, room to the upside, into the bearish engulfing, into the 1272, just like we saw on the S&P, and all the way into 4472 to 4075, where the 1618 extension currently resides as well. Okay, interestingly, the TSX, after such a great run, was well ahead, it appeared, of the North American markets, the U.S. markets, pardon me. Suddenly, they've just gone like flat. Barely any increase in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but still managed to get over the shooting stars. Now just kind of still sideways with the doji again today, but holding the 8 moving average for now. The 20 is still coming up, the 50 is still coming up, so everything's still on the side of upside. There's a little bit of a divergence that's negative, however. So when you look down at the stochastics for the time being, you're seeing that there is a lower high right now, and prices really not much, but are going up at the moment. So is this enough of a reset right now to go through it higher again, or will they just flush this thing into the 20, flush this thing into 14,000 to give a thorough test from the top side down, which they've not really done at this point? All right, the DAX lower again. Expected that since there was really no support here per se. If they were going to get through this little bit of a small pivot here at 9,400, they'd be going lower. If they did, they'd be heading probably toward 9,100. Sure enough, that's what appears to be happening right now. So that's your next target. US dollar, Canadian dollar came off the 50. Nice, bounced, and then here again a little bit of continuation. Still a little bit of resistance across 111.70, 112, I should say, all the way to maybe 112.50. Certainly 112.25, but it looks like it's wanting to come back up there and test. Certainly it's gone sideways for multiple weeks, but now coming off the 50 and looking to perhaps retest the highs once again. After the euro US dollar broke out above the resistance area, that goal line, essentially it's gone sideways with profit taking that we'd expected. Some of that we might expect to come back toward the goal line just as a retest, plus where the 8 moving average will probably reside as well. So look for a possible retest below, but certainly sideways at a minimum, with ultimately perhaps a move to the upside if we can still see some bullish activity. Right now it looks like profit taking for now. Okay, then we got Treasuries. Treasuries holding steady at 132 still. So we saw the lower shadow on Friday. Hang on, is that Friday? Or is that today? Yeah, that's Friday. Good. So that was the 50-day moving average crossing over the 200. So we thought maybe it would be a bounce in this area. Sure enough, there's a hot on me now. So I'm looking now for Treasuries to stabilize. Possible retest one more time, 132, but looking to stabilize and look at least for a bump into the 20 and the 8 moving average above. Yen, after a really nice bullish move, at least in the U shape, cup shape, it just collapsed into the 50-day moving average, lower shadow, like we saw earlier as well with the Treasuries a minute ago, with a little bit of a bounce. Expected maybe a quieting after all the selling. Sure enough, it got real quiet. It's still very quiet. Looking for at least a move into the 8, but certainly perhaps a little bit higher as well, possibly anyway. In terms of retracement, if I were to do that for you now, you'd probably be looking at, the blue line across there, as well as into maybe the 20. It would get you about a 50% retracement from this recent decline that's occurred. So look for that. Anything lower than the lows of, we'll call it Friday, down in here, then you're probably heading all the way down south into here next. So watch for that. All right, gold still sideways. So it's gone sideways. It's never quite reached 1360, but still hovering above 1330. And then the 20-day moving average has already crossed over and rising. The 200 is starting to flatten. The 50 is coming fast. So I'm looking for some chop in here still until they're happy with how the moving averages are going to be, with the trend being stronger. Now I'm still looking for a move higher. Now they could flush it into the 20. They could flush it even to the 200. As they did earlier back over here, just very briefly. Didn't drop very far. Back on the 20th of February, they hit the 200. They might want to do it again. Anywhere in here, 1320 to 1310-ish, 1305, they might do that again, possibly. But certainly, ultimately, we're looking for 1360 higher. And if we look at silver, okay, silver, a little bit of a hammer here. So it dropped, and we talked about how it might want to retest 2050. That's pretty much what it's done here. That was Friday's drop, and then we'll be looking for a drop into 2015. It did it with a hammer. So now I'm kind of looking for, if there's any kind of activity higher than this, I'm looking for this to finally get back toward 2150 and then 22 once again. So watch for silver, especially since there's a good positive divergence here that's occurred. Remember, prices have been declining, and we are in fact seeing a divergence here upward this way. So I like that kind of divergence going on right now in silver. So look for a long side for sure to 2150 or into 22 even for that matter. Okay, and then crude took the bounce last week, Thursday, Friday, and then today a pretty sizable drop back to the 200 once again as another retest. So it came down to the 200, bounced. That was also the 150 to 101 area, all the way down to maybe the century mark back on Thursday. It's back in this area again. I'm looking for some stability here as well. Maybe a small little flush, but certainly some stability. Ultimately, another push higher. This is retest 103, maybe 105. But right now, if it really starts to clear 150 again, and certainly the century mark in particular, then we're looking a lot lower. We're looking at 97 probably to 98, but 97 more likely. Okay, small caps, IWM here. We have the polarity area right here at 117 and a quarter. Rising window, perfect consolidation back into the 8 moving average. It might come back to the window a little bit as well, but right now it looks like profit taking and nothing more for the moment. With the trends up, you see the golden cross with the 20 over the 50. Everything looks great so far. And let's go to the VIX. So we saw the markets down. As I said earlier, the markets had come off their lows essentially. Well, the VIX was green. The VIX had gapped up over into just under 15, then crossed 15, got into the upper Bollinger Band, essentially was filling the window. Never closed through the window, so that window is still intact. Until you close through it, you're not done yet. But it went into the window, stopped, so that window became resistance, and then it faded all the way to its low, but back into the moving averages. So essentially the buyers of the VIX were there today, and they still closed in positive territory. So That window is a little bit of a problem. So the window above the high of today is your resistance. And I'd say right now, support is right where we are right now, right at the 8 moving average, maybe yesterday's close. And that's it. That's the range we're currently in again. Very tight and undecided at the moment. So let's keep an eye on that.